We appreciate all of the guests who have appeared on our show and sincerely thank them for providing you, our audience, with useful information. However, the advice our guests provide is theirs, and we encourage you to seek out a professional if you have specific questions about any topic we cover on the Crushing Debt podcast. On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt podcast, go focus yourself.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Sean Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner with Yesner Law, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and I have a very special guest, one that I've been chasing for a little bit and finally got him on. But before I get to my guest, I do want to talk very quickly about our sponsor. So if you are an attorney or title company and you have questions about the renewal of your errors and omissions insurance or E&O insurance or malpractice insurance, I want you to contact my friend Sam Cohen at Attorneys First Insurance. That's all Sam does is write malpractice insurance for attorneys and title companies all over the country. And if he's not licensed in your country, in your state rather, he can get licensed in your state, or he can refer you to someone who is licensed in your state. But he'll give you an apples to apples comparison of your malpractice insurance and let you know that you're on the right track, that he can beat your quote, or that your quote is good and he can't beat it or better it. So contact Sam at attorneysfirst.com or his website, which is also attorneysfirst.com. Or if you know an attorney or title company, please refer them over to Sam. That would mean a great deal to me. But I want to get to my guest this week, who also knows Sam Cohen, and so maybe I'll get him to give Sam a testimonial here in a little bit. But he is a guest, like I said, I've been chasing. Now, I had his daughter, Juliet, was on episode 63 of the podcast. You can go check that out. And his wife was on episode 193 of the podcast. So again, you can go check that out, and maybe I'll put links to those two episodes in the notes for this show. But my guest this week is the founding partner of ActionCOACH Tampa Bay. He's consistently ranked in the top 100 coaches globally and is a global trainer for new franchisees. Prior to founding his coaching firm, he served for 6 years as president and CEO of St. Anthony's Hospital in St. Pete, as well as executive vice president of the $3.5 billion Baycare Health System. He's been recognized with an Action Man Award by ActionCOACH founder Brad Sugars and received the honorable recognition by ActionCOACH as Best Coach in the World. His team's first book, OMG WTF, which was the subject of episode 193, OMG WTF, What's the Focus, was released in June of 2015 and was ranked number 2 on Amazon's bestseller list and number 1 hot new release in the first week. He provides executive and business coaching services for CEOs and business owners who want to take their business to the next level to achieve their dreams in business and life. Welcome, my friend. Welcome, my mentor. Welcome, my guest, Ford Kyes. Welcome, Ford.
Oh, thank you, Sean. It's great to be on here with you. I was hoping I'd finally get a chance to be on your podcast. This is exciting.
Yeah, I'm having a good time. So we need to we'll have all three of the Kyes family from ActionCOACH when we're done with this episode.
Awesome.
I read OMG WTF. What's the Focus? I talked to Barb and Juliet about the book. And I understand we talked a little bit pre-interview, the title of this episode, Go Focus Yourself. I understand there's some changes on the horizon to the book.
Well, the book has been a great success, and we've gotten lots of feedback. It's gotten a lot of international sales because ActionCOACH is an international franchise in 88 countries, and our book has been promoted to the ActionCOACH community. But, it's been 5 years and lots of some new ideas and some ways. So we're going to be planning on rewriting the book this year. And the working title for the new book is Go Focus Yourself. Because, again, it's WTF. It's all about the focus. And it's really, that's one of the keys to business success, is really getting focused.
So out of curiosity, why a rewrite rather than a second book?
Well, it's going to be a second book. And, the OMG WTF book had a number of ways that we approached the subject. we initially wrote it really for our clients. We never expected it to have the sort of a public success that it had. But now this book is going to be more focused on advice for any business owner instead of just for our clients that are in a coaching program. This is going to be more focused on what the things are that you can do that will make a big difference in your business.
Okay. So, I like to keep things evergreen, as we call it in the podcast community. In other words, not stick something to a specific timeline, but we're recording here the end of January. I think this episode's going to be out beginning of February-ish of 2021. Is there any timetable? Do you have a target date that neither me nor my audience will hold you to, but is there a target date in mind?
Well, certainly before the end of the year. Thanks for asking. But, I see us working diligently on this mostly in the second and third quarter. So if, you don't know when you start. This is based on my experience in doing our first book. You don't really know till you get started and get the pattern and the rhythm, because we all have businesses, that we're also operating in. So it's a little bit hard to judge when it'll be out. But, certainly by fourth quarter, I would expect.
Okay. And not to keep you on the spot, but I know the first book was a collaboration between you, your wife, Barb, and your daughter, Juliet. And I know since then you've expanded and brought on a couple other coaches. Is the new book still going to be just the three of you, or are the other two coaches, Scott and Tony, are they going to also contribute to the new book?
You really are putting me on the spot. I love it. I don't know yet. It's definitely going to be Barb and Juliet and I, but until we sit down, which we will soon, and lay out the full outline of the book, I just don't know if it's something that the others will want to contribute.
Okay. Well, fair enough. And I get it. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I figure we've known each other now since 2008. So I think I can put you on the spot here and there if I need to.
Sure.
So go focus yourself. I love the topic. I love the idea of it. And for anyone who's wondering, you can always go to Ford's website, which is ActionCOACHTampaBay.com. I'm sure that as the book is nearing launch, or as the book is launched, there'll be information on the website about getting the book. Also, you can go to their events page, ActionCOACHTampaBay.com, the events page on the website. They have a bunch of complimentary events, webinars, Zoom webinars. A lot of the events lead to complimentary coaching sessions with Ford, with Juliet, with Barb, with all the coaches, with Scott, with Tony. So if you have questions about the book, if you're interested in the progress of the book, or if you just want to check out some of what Action Coach Tampa Bay has to offer, again, ActionCOACHTampaBay.com, go to the events page. There's all kinds of events there on the website. But I wanted to ask a couple other questions, sort of all around focus. So again, as we record this now, we're at the beginning of 2021. There's a sense of revival as we get into the new year. Despite your political, whatever way someone leans politically, we've got a new president. So there's a sense there. But we're still dealing with COVID. We're still dealing with issues related to COVID. There's a second round of PPP loans coming out. There's relief packages. There's all this other stuff. So what advice would you give to a business owner who is scared, who is struggling, who is thinking, what's going to happen to my business? What advice would you give someone like that?
That's a great question, Sean. And, we've spent this last year supporting, I think it's like 50 different businesses in our firm. And they've all had a successful 2020. I mean, a few dips and as you might imagine, but overall, all of our clients have had a successful 2020. And I think the result has been just staying very focused on what's the most important value that I'm bringing to the marketplace. So every business has something, a unique value that makes them special. And staying very focused on that, and then trying to figure out, how am I going to communicate that? because if you were, we had one client that, most of their leads came from trade shows. That's what they did. Every month they were in multiple trade shows, and that's where all their leads came from, and they were a successful growing company. Well, guess what? That all went away. So they had to completely shift or pivot. A lot of people are using that word pivot, but they stayed focused on what their value proposition was and just realized that they had to come up with a new strategy for communicating. And that company was just recognized on the Forbes 1000 as one of the fastest growing companies in the country and made the Tampa Bay top 50 fastest growing companies in a year where their whole source of leads had to completely change. But that's because they got very focused on getting their message out through a new methodology and on the training that required for their team to implement that strategy.
I think I might know. I won't say, but I think I might know which company you're talking about.
It's Pure Air Control Services. I mean, I'm
Okay.
proud to say who it is, and because they've been extremely successful, and they're providing such an important service right now. They got the contract with the Javits Center in New York. After that had been a hospital for COVID patients, they went in and cleaned the Javits Center so it can reopen and be available to sponsor events and conventions.
Wow.
So just to give you an idea of the kind of impact that they're having, the universities, the list is long and distinguished of the things that they're doing to help people get back into safe environments.
Yeah, that's a great story, and actually isn't who I thought it was. So that's interesting as well. One of the things that always strikes me, one of the things that I've always tried to do in my business, in my law firms, is to try to do things that are complementary, but can still focus. And so, for example, this podcast itself is one way that I promote the law firm. My 2 books are ways that I promote the law firm. Deciding whether to go into a different area or complementary area of practice of law. So how do you distinguish between this is something complementary that I can bring on board and absorb, or this is some place that I have to pivot, versus this is something totally off track and I'm gonna lose focus potentially if I chase this bunny trail?
Yeah, right. So diversification and when does it make good sense is something that's been studied. There was an important paper in the Harvard Business Review a few years back looking at this. And what they found is that diversification has a better chance of being successful if it's very close to your core business. So you mentioned your core business is about, helping people with debt. Well, one of the ways to help people with debt is to educate them, right? I mean, that's a key area is for them. They've got to change their behavior. So you've written books and you have a podcast and you do a lot of other things that I'm aware of and speaking to educate people so that they can see the value of what services you had to offer and how they can improve. So that's a great diversification strategy. That's why that works. The people that go too far abroad from their core business and try new things, I'm not saying that they can't be successful, but the chances of success drop dramatically. And that's what the research shows. So again, staying close to your core, things that are complementary to your core business offering, your core value proposition, those are worth considering based on your time availability.
Okay. And so sort of following up on that, we're all human. We all deal with our own, issues. So what would you say to somebody, what would you say to a business owner that maybe says, I started out really well, but, this or that or the other has happened and maybe I'm starting to lose focus. How do you snap out of that funk? What advice would you give to someone?
Well, I just think that there's a lot of good literature. I mean, I have a list of books that I found that if I can get people to do some reading, because as you well know, this is an axiom from BNI, which we're both members of. If you want to earn more, you have to learn more. Our founder of ActionCOACH globally says, look, the only place where earn comes before learn is in the dictionary. It's the only place.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to learn to earn. So that's really becomes the key is, starting to learn what does the best literature tell me about how do I improve my attitude, improve my view of the world? And then having somebody like a coach to bounce those ideas off of, develop some very specific strategies that you've agreed to implement to help you. So one example is the literature says that if you keep a journal and notice every day what progress you're making instead of just what's left to be done. So if you keep a journal and you take note of what progress you're making, that's a big boost. In fact, the number one motivator for all human beings, there has been so much research around this that it's unequivocal. The number one motivator for all human beings is making progress towards a worthwhile goal. Making progress towards a worthwhile goal. Well, maybe you're making progress towards your worthwhile goals, but you're not noticing. All you're noticing is the tough stuff and what you have to do next. If you can notice that you're making progress, that gets you very motivated, and that can help turn around this people in a funk kind of thing.
Okay. Got so many things there. So I do keep a journal every day. Actually, I got one of my very first ones from you and Barb. So I do journal every day. And I agree. One thing that I put in my journal is a page dedicated to what I call weekly wins. So every time I do something that I'm excited about, it goes on that. So today's podcast interview is going to be on that weekly wins page. And then I know for me, whenever I'm starting to feel down or I'm starting to feel like I'm straying, I go back to those weekly wins at the end of every year. I go back and all the great stuff that's happened to me over the course of the year. And so that certainly helped me out a lot. And I'm actually using the one, I know we're not videoing, this is only audio, but I'm showing you now, Barb gave me a new one. And so I'm using it now to take notes for all my podcast episodes and all my guests and all that kind of stuff.
So let me share one other story. I had an executive client that I was coaching, and he was really down about his marriage. It was his second marriage, and it just was getting he felt like it was heading down a wrong path. He was frustrated with his wife, didn't feel like she was doing the things that he thought she should do to support him, and he was very frustrated. I had him keep a journal every day of just writing down one thing that his wife did that was great, that he appreciated. Just one thing every day. And before he even shared it with her, which he did on Thanksgiving of last year, he shared the results. She didn't know he was doing it. He gave her the book. And even before that, he told me that his relationship was improving dramatically. Why? Because he was focused on noticing the good stuff instead of just focusing on the negative stuff.
Yeah.
Our brains go to negative if we don't actively intervene to notice the positive stuff.
It's interesting. I've heard that idea somewhere before as well. And so I did the same thing. And me and my wife have a great relationship, but I decided to do that anyway. And I ended up giving that book to my wife on her birthday. And she still has it. She continues to write in it. So that's a great idea. One of the things I talked about in one of the episodes I did at the very beginning of the year was setting goals. And actually, I think I referenced you in the episode because I know that you taught me goals need to be SMART, S-M-A-R-T. But one of the other things that you taught me was, I think you called it SMARTY, S-M-A-R-T-Y. And the Y was that the goal needs to be your goal, as a why. But in terms of focus, how would you suggest, other than SMART? I mean, SMART's a great place to start. And if you want to describe it again, to the extent I may not have done it justice in that episode a couple weeks ago, but how would you suggest to somebody that they create goals or create SMART goals?
Well, one of the first things, and you didn't mention this in the process, that we find is very helpful, but it's akin to the subjects we were just discussing, and that is to reflect on the prior period. What did you get? What did you get solved? What were the big challenges you had to overcome? Not just painting out all the challenges. Everybody has challenges. What were the challenges that you overcame in the last period? So if you're doing it for a year, do it for a year. If you're doing it quarterly, which is what you should do every quarter, then just think quarterly. What did you learn? Just get lists of things that you learned, because that becomes the foundation for saying, where do I want to go in the next specific period? As you said, SMART goals, the T stands for time. So be very specific. What do I want to accomplish in the next 90 days, for example? And it needs to be specific so that it can also be measurable and achievable. You need to set goals that you think is going to push you, but are achievable. And they need to be specific, results oriented, and have a time frame. So that's the SMART process that you discussed. But the way to start is to reflect first on what you learned, what are key things, what are the ideas that you had. Oftentimes as the quarter is unfolding and your plan unfolds, you'll get different ideas about, well, maybe I should go look at this. Well, just put that aside, keep it in what I call a parking lot. So that then when you're doing your next plan, you can review those parking lot items, but don't let them get you off track from your current plan.
Well, thank you. I think I like that. That makes a lot of sense, and that's probably something I need to start doing. I do it annually, but doing it quarterly is probably a good idea. So again, if you want to interact with Ford, if you want to talk to Juliet or Barb or Tony or Scott or any of the coaches over there at Action Coach, again, the website is ActionCOACHTampaBay.com. There is an events page. You can go sign up for some of their online events, some of their complimentary events, and I think all the complimentary events lead to a complimentary coaching session with the team, with the coaches. So, Ford, anything that we didn't talk about, anything that you want to mention before we start to wrap up?
No, I think this has been a good review, and I appreciate the opportunity to share it with people. And we're just very passionate about helping businesses to be successful in our community. And so that's what we lead with. And so we're happy to meet with people just to see if we can help them, see if it makes sense. So I would encourage people to reach out, come to one of our webinars so that you understand what it's all about. And then if you're interested, after you've learned more about what we do or some subject matter that's of interest to you, just sign up and say, let's sit down together on Zoom probably, and just decide together whether makes any sense for us to work together further.
Do you have, I know it's Action Coach Tampa Bay, do you have a geographic limitation or can the business owner be anywhere?
Yeah, the business owner can be anywhere. So, as long as they're reaching out to us, I'm not going to, it doesn't make sense anyway, but I'm not going to advertise, outside of Tampa Bay. I'm not going to be in Orlando with advertisements. But anybody from Orlando, and we've had a number of clients from Orlando, just as an example, if they find us online or otherwise and reach out to us, then it's totally fair game. We can help anybody anywhere in the country. We've had clients overseas. So that all works great.
Okay. And then, again, I guess I have to bookend putting you on the spot at the beginning and at the end of the episode. I did mention at the beginning that our sponsor is Sam Cohen with Attorneys First, and that yes. Sam. So if you want to give him a testimonial.
I've known Sam since I've been in BNI, so that's been 13 years. And what an excellent resource. He's a great individual, very trustworthy, just a terrific guy, extremely knowledgeable, highly respected by everybody who interacts with him. And so, he really is a great person. I would refer people to him, hands down. That's where I would send people for the things that he does.
Very good. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sure he will appreciate it. I know he listens to all the episodes. He's constantly giving me feedback, which a lot of the changes on the show, sponsor wants me to do something, I'll do something. So with that, Ford, I really appreciate you being on the show this week. Say hello to everybody else over there at Action Coach Tampa Bay for me.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. So again, ActionCOACHTampaBay.com, go to their events page. If you want to pick up any of my books, the easiest way to do that, you can get the newest book, Become Debt Free, at SeanMYesner.com/become debt free. And again, I'll put all these links here in the notes, but Thanks again for it. I really enjoyed this week's episode. Like I say at the end of every episode, I hope that at the end of the month you have more money rather than at the end of the money you have more month. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, and we look forward to talking to you in next week's episode.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Sean or connect with us on social media. Sean Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.